yourself a philosopher, nor suffer others to call you so. Rather say, he is in error, for my desires, my impulses are unaltered. I give in my adhesion to what I did before, nor has my mode of dealing with the things of sense undergone any change. When a friend inclined to cynic views asked Epictetus what sort of person a true cynic should be, requesting a general sketch of the system, he answered, we will consider that at leisure. At present I content myself with saying this much. If a man put his hands to so weighty a matter without God, the wrath of God abides upon him. That which he covets but bring upon him public shame, and even on finding himself in a well-ordered house, does a man step forward and say to himself, I must be master here. Else the lord of that house takes notice of it, and seeing him insolently giving orders, drags him forth and chastises him. So it is also in this great city, the world. Here also is there a lord of the house who orders all things. Thou art the sun. In thine orbit thou hast power to make the year and the seasons, to bid the fruits and the earth grow and increase, the winds arise and fall. Thou canst in due measure cherish with thy warmth the frames of men. Go make thy circuit, and thus minister unto all, from the greatest to the least. Thou canst lead a host against Troy, be Agamemnon. Thou canst meet Hector in single combat, be Achilles. But had Thersites stepped forward and claimed the chief command, he had been met with a refusal, or obtained it only to his own shame and confusion of face before a cloud of witnesses. Others may fence themselves with walls and houses when they do such deeds as these and wrap themselves in darkness. They have many a device to hide themselves. Another may shut his door and station one before his chamber to say, if any comes, he has gone forth, he is not at leisure. But the true cynic will have none of these things. Instead of them, he must wrap himself up in modesty, else he will bring about himself to shame, and naked under the open sky. That is his house, that is his door, that is the slave that guards his chamber, that is his darkness. But whither shall I fly? Can any man cast me beyond the limit? And whithersoever I go, there shall I still find sun, moon, and stars. There shall I find dreams and omens, and converse with the gods.
Do you live with chronic knee pain? As you age, the cartilage cushion in your knees naturally wears away.
Vasquez, are you angry?
Golden sayings of Epictetus. Are these the only works of providence in us? Would words suffice to praise or set them forth? Had we understanding, should we ever cease hymning and blessing the divine power, both openly and in secret, and telling of his gracious gifts? Whether digging or plowing or eating, should we not sing the hymn to God? Great is God, for that he hath given instruments to till the ground withal. Great is God, for that he hath given us hands, and the power of swallowing and digesting, of unconsciously growing and breathing while we sleep. Thus should we ever have sung, yea, and this, the grandest and divinest hymn of all. Great is God, for that he hath given us a mind to apprehend these things, to God on behalf of all men. What else can I, that am old and lame, do but sing to God? Were I a nightingale, I should do after the manner of a nightingale. Were I a swan, I should do after the manner of a swan. But now, since I am a reasonable being, I must sing to God. That is my work, I do it, nor will I desert this my post, as long as it is granted me to hold it. And upon you, too, I call to join in this self-same hymn. How then do men act? The knight in a fair inn should be so captivated thereby as to take up his abode there. Forgotten thine intention. This was not thy destination, but only lay on the way thither. Nay, but it is a proper place, and how many more of the sort there be, only to pass through upon thy way. Thy purpose was to return to thy country, to relieve the kinsman's fears for thee, thyself to discharge the duties of a citizen, to marry a wife, to beget offspring, and to fill the appointed round of office. Thou didst not come to choose out what places are most pleasant, but rather to return to that wherein thou wast born and where thou wert appointed to be a citizen. Try to enjoy the great festival of life with other men. But I have one whom I must please, to whom I must be subject, whom I must obey, God, and those who come next to him. He hath entrusted me with myself, he hath made my will subject to myself alone, and given me rules for the right use thereof. Rufus used to say, if you have leisure to praise me, what I say is not. In truth, he spoke in such wise that him to Rufus, so surely did he lay the very deeds we did, so surely display the faults of each before his very eyes. But what saith God? Had it been possible, Epictetus, I would have made both that body of thine and thy possessions free and unimpeded, but as it is, be not deceived. It is not thine own, it is but finely tempered clay. Since then this I could not do. I have given thee a portion of myself, and the power of desiring and declining and pursuing and avoiding. In a word, the power of dealing with the things of sense. And if thou neglect not this, but place all that thou hast therein, thou shalt never be let or hindered, thou shalt never lament, thou shalt not blame or flatter any. What then seemeth this to thee a little thing? God forbid. Be content then therewith, and so I pray the gods. What saith Antisthenes? Hast thou never heard? It is a kingly thing, O Cyrus, to do well, to be evil spoken of. I but to debase myself thus were unworthy of me. That said, Epictetus, is for you to consider, not for me. You know yourself what you are worth in your own eyes, and at what price you will sell yourself, for men sell themselves at various prices. This was why, when Florus was deliberating whether he should appear at Nero's shows, taking part in the performance himself, Agrippinus replied, appear by all means. And when Florus inquired, but why do not you appear? He answered, because I do not even consider the question. For the man who has once stooped to consider such questions and reckon up the value of external things is not far from forgetting what manner of man he is. Why, what is it that you ask me? Is death preferable or life? I reply life. Pain or pleasure? I reply pleasure. Well, but if I do not act, I shall lose my head. Then go and act, but for my part I will not act. Why? Because you think yourself but one among the many threads which make up the texture of the doublet. You should aim at being like men in general, just as your thread has no ambition either to be anything distinguished compared with the other threads. But I desire to be the pebble, that small and shining part which makes the rest seem fair and beautiful. Why then do you bid me become even as the multitude? Then were I no longer the purple. If a man could be thoroughly penetrated as he ought with this thought that we are all in an especial manner sprung from God, and that God is the father of men as well as of gods, full surely he would never conceive aught ignoble or base of himself, whereas if Caesar were to adopt you, your haughty looks would be intolerable. Will you not be elated at knowing that you are the Son of God? Now, however, it is not so with us, but seeing that in our birth these two things are commingled, the body which we share with the animals, and the reason and thought which we share with the gods, many decline towards this unhappy kinship with the dead, few rise to the blessed kinship with the divine. Since then every one must deal with each thing according to the view which he forms about it. Those few who hold that they are born for fidelity, modesty, and unerring sureness in dealing with the things of sense, never conceive aught base or ignoble of themselves, but the multitude the contrary. Why, what am I, a wretched human creature with this miserable flesh of mine? Miserable indeed, but you have something better than the paltry flesh of yours. Why then cling to the one and neglect the other? Thou art but a poor soul, laden with life. Without you, your haughty looks would be intolerable. The other day I had an iron lamp placed beside my household gods. I heard a noise at the door, and hastening down, found my lamp carried off. I reflected that the culprit was in no very strange case. Tomorrow, my friend, I said, you will find an earthenware lamp, for a man can only lose what he has. The reason why I lost my lamp was that the thief was superior to me in vigilance. He paid, however, this price for the lamp, that in exchange for it he hastened to become a thief, in exchange for it to become faithless. If we were as intent upon our own business as the old fellows at Rome are upon what interests them, we too might perhaps accomplish something. I know a man older than I am, now superintendent of the corn market at Rome, and I remember when he passed through this place on his way back from exile, what account he gave me of his former life, declaring that for future, once home again, his only care should be to pass his remaining years in quiet and tranquility. For how few years have I left, he cried. That, I said, you will not do, but the moment the scent of Rome is in your nostrils, you will forget it all, and if you can but gain admission to court, you'll be glad enough to elbow your way in, and thank God for it. Epictetus, he replied, if you ever find me setting as much as 1 foot within the court, think what you will of me. Well, as it was, what did he do ere ever he entered the city? He was met by dispatch from the emperor. He took it and forgot the whole of his resolutions. From that moment he has been piling one thing upon another. I should like to be beside him to remind him of what he said when passing this way, and to add how much better a prophet I am than you. What then? Do I say man is not made for an act of war? Far from it, but there is a great difference between other men's occupations and ours. A glance at theirs will make it clear to you. All day long they do nothing but calculate, contrive, consult how to wring their profit out of foodstuffs, farm plots, and the like. Whereas I entreat you to learn what the administration of the world is, will place a being endowed with reason holds therein, to consider what you are yourself, and wherein your good and evil consist. Not for your pity, no evil has happened unto me that he does. And how does it come to pass? As the disposer has disposed it, now he has disposed that there should be summer and winter, and plenty and dearth, and vice and virtue, and all such opposites for the harmony of the whole. Have this thought ever present with thee, when thou losest any outward thing, what thou gainest in its stead? And if this be the more precious, say not, I have suffered loss. Concerning the gods, there are who deny the very existence of the Godhead. Others say that it exists, but neither bestows nor concerns itself, nor has forethought for anything. Third party attribute to it existence and forethought, but only for great and heavenly matters, not for anything that is on earth. A fourth party admit things on earth as well as in heaven, but only in general, and not with respect to each individual. A fifth of whom were Ulysses and Socrates are those that cry, I move not without thy knowledge. Considering all these things, the good and true man submits his judgment to him that administers the universe, even as good citizens, to the law of the state. And he that is being instructed should come thus minded, how may I in all things follow the gods, and how may I satisfied with the divine administration, and how may I become free, for he is free for whom all things come to pass according to his will, and whom none can hinder. What then is freedom? Madness? God forbid, for madness and freedom exist not together. But I wish all that I desire to come to pass in the manner that I desire. You are mad, you are beside yourself. Know you not that freedom is a glorious thing and of great worth? But that what I desired at random, I should wish at random to come to pass, so far from being noble, may well be exceeding base. You must know that it is no easy thing for a principle to become a man's own, unless each day he maintained it and hear it maintained, as well as work it out in life. You are impatient and hard to please. If alone you call it solitude, if in the company of men you dub them conspirators and thieves, and find fault with your very parents, children, brothers, and neighbors, Whereas when by yourself you should have called it tranquility and freedom, and herein deemed yourself like unto the gods. And when in the company of the many you should not have called it a weirdsome crowd and tumult, but an assembly and a tribunal, and thus accepted all with contentment. What then is the chastisement of those who accept it? Not to be as they are. Is any discontented with being alone? Let him be in solitude. Is any discontented with his parents? Let him be a bad son and lament. Is any discontented with his children? Let him be a bad father. Throw him into prison. What prison? Where he is already, for he is there against his will. And wherever a man is against his will, there to him is a prison. Now Socrates was not in prison, since he was there with his own consent. Knowing thou what a speck thou art in comparison with the universe. That is, with respect to the body, since with respect to reason, thou art not inferior to the gods, no less than they. For the greatness of reason is not measured by length or height, but by the resolves of the mind. Place then thy happiness in that wherein thou art equal to the gods. Asked how a man might eat acceptably to the gods, Epictetus replied, if when he eats he can be just, cheerful, equable, temperate, and orderly, can he not thus eat acceptably to the gods? But when you call for warm water and your slave does not answer, or when he enters brings it lukewarm, or is not even found to be in the house at all, then not to be vexed nor burst with anger, is not that acceptable to the gods? But how can one endure such people? Slave, will you not endure your own brother that has got to his forefather, even as a son sprung from the same stock and of the same high descent as yourself? And if you are stationed in a high position, are you therefore forthwith to set up for a tyrant? Remember who you are and whom you rule, that they are by nature your kinsmen, your brothers, the offspring of God. But I paid a price for them, not they for me. Do you see whither you are looking? Down to the earth, to the pie, to the pit, to those despicable laws of the dead? But to the laws of the gods you do not look. When we are invited to a banquet, we take what is set before us, and were one to call upon his host to set fish on the table or sweet things, he would be deemed absurd. Yet in a word, we ask the gods for what they do not give, and that although they have given us so many things, asked how a man might convince himself that every single act of this was under the eye of God, Epictetus answered, do you not hold that all things are bound together in one? I do. Well, and do you not hold that things on earth and things in heaven are continuous and in unison with each other? I do, was the reply. Else how should the trees so regularly, as though by God's command at his bidding flower, at his bidding send forth shoots, bear fruit and ripen it, at his bidding let it fall and shed their leaves, themselves lie in quietness and rest? How else as the moon waxes and wanes, as the sun approaches and recedes, can it be that such vicissitude and alternation is seen in earthly things? If then all things that grow, nay, our own bodies are thus bound up with the whole, is it not this still truer of the souls? And if our souls are bound up and in contact with God as being very parts and fragments plucked from himself, shall he not feel every movement of theirs as though it were his own, and belonging to his own nature? But you say, I cannot comprehend all this at once. Why, who told you that your powers were equal to God's? Yet God hath placed by the side of each a man's own guardian spirit. To the Stoics, the guardian spirit was each man's reason, who is charged to watch over him, the guardian who sleeps, nor is deceived. For to what better or more watchful guardian could he have committed each of us? So when you have shut the doors and made a darkness within, remember never to say that you are alone, for you are not alone, but God is within, and your guardian spirit. What light do they need to behold what you do? To this God you also should have sworn allegiance, even as soldiers unto Caesar. They, when their service is hired, swear to hold the life of Caesar dearer than all else. And will you not swear your oath that are deemed worthy of so many and great gifts? And will you not Keep your oath when you have sworn it. And what oath will you swear? Never to disobey, never to arraign or murmur at aught that comes to you from his hand, never unwillingly to do or suffer aught that necessity lays upon you. Is this oath like theirs? I swear to hold no other dearer than Caesar, you to hold our true selves dearer than all else beside. How shall my brother cease to be wroth with me? Bring him to me, and I will tell him, but to thee I have nothing to say about his anger. When one took counsel of Epictetus, saying, what I seek is this, how even though my brother be not reconciled to me, I may still remain as nature would have me to be. He replied, all great things are slow of growth, nay, this is true even of a grape or of a fig. If then you say to me now, I desire a fig, I shall answer, it needs time, wait till it first flower, and cast its blossom, then ripen. Whereas when the fruit of the fig tree reaches not to maturity suddenly, nor yet in a single hour, do you nevertheless desire so quickly and easily to reap the fruit of the mind of man? Nay, expect it not, even though I bade you. Epaphroditus had a shoemaker whom he sold as being good for nothing. This fellow by some accident was afterwards purchased by one of Caesar's men and became shoemaker to Caesar. You should have seen what respect Epaphroditus paid him then. How does the good Felicion kindly let me know? And if any of us inquired, what is Epaphroditus doing? The answer was, he is consulting about so and so with Felicion. He not sold him as good for nothing, who had in a trice converted him into a wiseacre? This is what comes of holding of importance anything but the things that depend on the will. What you shun, enduring yourself, attempt not to impose on others. You shun slavery. Beware of enslaving others. If you can endure to do that, one would think you had been once upon a time a slave yourself. For vice has nothing in common with virtue, nor freedom with slavery. Has a man been raised to the tribuneship? Every one that he meets congratulates him. One kisses him on the eyes, another on the neck, while the slaves kiss his hands. He goes home to find torches burning. He is sent to the capital to sacrifice. Whoever sacrificed for having had right desires, for having conceived such inclinations as nature would have him. In truth, we thank the gods, for that were in place our happiness. A man was talking to me today about the priesthood of Augustus. I said to him, let the thing go, my good sir. You will spend a great deal to no purpose. Well, but my name will be inserted in all the documents and contracts. Will you be standing there to tell those that read them, that is my name written there? And even though you could now be there in every case, what will you do when you are dead? At all events, my name will remain. Inscribe it on a stone, and it will remain just as well, and think beyond Nicopolis what memory of you will there be. But I shall have a golden wreath to wear. If you must have a wreath, get a wreath of roses and put it on. You will look more elegant. Above all, remember that the door stands open. Be not more fearful than children, but as they, when they weary of the game, cry, I will play no more. Even so, when thou art in the like case, cry, I will play no more and depart. But if thou stayest, make no lamentation. Is there smoke in the room? If it be slight, I remain. If grievous, I quit it. For you must remember this and hold it fast. The door stands open. You shall not dwell at Nicopolis, well and good, nor at Athens. And I will not dwell at Athens either, nor at Rome, nor at Rome either. You shall dwell in Gyara. Well, but to dwell in Gyara seems to me like a grievous smoke. Depart to a place where none can forbid me to dwell. That. For as for the last garment of all, that is the beyond that none cannot do aught unto me. This is why Demetrius said to Nero, you threaten me with death, but it is nature who threatens you. The beginning of philosophy is to know the condition of one's own mind. If a man recognizes that this is in a weakly state, he will not then want to apply it to questions of the greatest moment. As it is, men who are not fit to swallow even a morsel buy whole treatises and try to devour them. Accordingly, they will vomit them up again or suffer from indigestion, whence come gripings, fluxions, and fevers, whereas they should have stopped to consider their capacity. In theory, it is easy to convince an ignorant person. In actual life, men not only object to offer themselves to be convinced, but hate the man who has convinced them. Whereas Socrates used to say that we should never lead a life not subjected to examination. This is the reason why Socrates, when reminded that he should prepare for his trial, answered, "Thinkest thou not that I have been preparing for it all my life? In what way? I have maintained that which in me lay. How so? I have never secretly, openly done wrong unto any. In what character dost thou now come forward? Is a witness summoned by God. Come thou, saith God, and testify for me, for thou art worthy of being brought forward as a witness by me. Is aught that is outside thy will either good or bad? Do I hurt any man? Have I placed the good of each in the power of any other than himself? What witness dost thou bear to God? I am in evil state, master, I am undone. None careth for me, none giveth me aught. All men blame, all speak evil of me. Is this the witness thou wilt bear and do dishonor to the calling wherewith he hath called thee? Because he hath done thee so great honor, and deemed thee worthy of being summoned to bear witness in so great a cause? Wouldst thou have men speak good of thee? Speak good of them. And when thou hast learned to speak good of them, try to do good unto them, and thus thou wilt reap in return their speaking good of thee. When thou goest in to any of the great, remember that another from above sees what is passing, and that thou shouldest please him rather than man. He therefore asks thee, in the schools, what didst thou call exile, imprisonment, bonds, death? I call them different things, and I call them things indifferent. What then dost thou call them now? Are they at all changed? No, it is then thou that art changed. Not in our power, say then what follows, that things which are not in our power are nothing to me. Say also what things you hold to be good, a will such as it ought to be, and a right use of the things of sense. And what is the end? To follow thee. That Socrates should ever have been so treated by the Athenians, slave, why say Socrates, speak of the thing as it is, that ever then the poor body of Socrates should have been dragged away and haled by main force to prison, that ever hemlock should have been given to the body of Socrates, that should have breathed its life away. Do you marvel at this? Do you hold this unjust? Is it for this that you accuse God? Had Socrates no compensation for this? Where then for him was the ideal good? Whom shall we hearken to, you or him? And what says he? Anytus and Miletus may put me to death, to injure me is beyond their power. And again, if such be the will of God, so let it be. Nay, young man, for heaven's sake, but once thou hast heard these words, go home and say to thyself, it is not Epictetus that has told me these things, how indeed he... No, it is some gracious God through him, else it would never have entered his head to tell me them. He that is not used to speak to any one of us, well then let us not lie under the wrath of God, but be obedient unto him. Nay, indeed, but if a raven by its croaking bears thee any sign, it is not the raven but God that sends the sign through the raven. And if he signifies anything to thee through human voice, will he not cause the man to say these words to thee, that thou mayest know the power of the divine? How he sends a sign to some in one way, and to others in another, and on the greatest and highest matters of all signifies his will through the noblest messenger. What else does the poet mean? I spake unto him erst myself, and sent Hermes in the shining, one to check and warn him, the husband not to slay, nor woo the wife. In the same way, my friend Heraclitus, who had a trifling suit about a petty farm at Rhodes, first showed the judges that his cause was just, and then at the finish cried, I will not entreat you, nor do I care what sentence you pass. It is you who are on your trial, not I. And so he ended the case. As for us, we behave like a herd of deer. When they flee from the huntsman's fellows in affright, which way do they turn? What haven of safety do they make for? Why, they rush upon the nets, thus they perish by confounding what they should fear with that wherein no danger lies. Not death or pain is to be feared, but the fear of death or pain. Well said the poet, therefore, death has no terror, only a death of shame. How is it then that certain external things are said to be natural and others contrary to nature? Why, just as it might be said if we stood alone and apart from others, a foot, for instance, I will allow it is natural should be clean, but if you take it as a foot and as a thing which does not stand by itself, it will beseem it, if need be, to walk in the mud, to tread on thorns, and sometimes even to be cut off for the benefit of the whole body. Else it is no longer a foot. In some such way we should conceive of ours also. What art thou, a man?